Luke Owen from Age of Cybersecurity. Just a little bit of context before we jump into it. Age of Cybersecurity is a GRC, fractional CISO, framework implementation and general cybersecurity consulting firm based in Brisbane, Queensland. We service the entire of Australia, plus have some interesting conversations with clients in the Pacific Islands, Papua New Guinea and New Zealand. The theme we're going with this time is that cyber risk beyond just IT. Now, we've seen time and time again the phrase being used that cyber risk is not an IT problem. It never has been. It never was. It just got lumped there because it seems to happen on a computer. Well, by that same argument, that means all accounting problems are IT problems and all reception problems are IT problems because they happen on a computer. The nature of the fact is that just because it works across a silicon chip doesn't make it an IT problem. This isn't new. The regulators, the insurers, the auditors, and boards have been saying this for over a decade. And this persistent myth that is still present that we've got an IT guy for that doesn't work, doesn't hold up. We need to highlight that IT keeps the systems running. Cybersecurity manages the risk to the business. Cybersecurity risk is positioned alongside financial risk, legal risk, operational risk, reputational risk. If the business can be materially harmed by a cyber event, that makes it a business risk. By definition, that is a business risk. That is not an IT problem. That is not an IT risk. That is a cyber risk. Now, IT ownership, when it's assigned to cybersecurity, it fails because IT is measured on uptime, performance, cost, user experience, and those are all great things, and you certainly need those from a good and well-skilled technical solutions partner to provide those outcomes from the business. You need your Outlook to work. You need the CRM to be configured, designed and managed and used the right way to support business outcomes. Technology in the business supports operational outcomes, and that is exactly what they're supposed to do. The challenge is that cybersecurity generally requires or inflicts friction, deliberate constraints, saying no to convenience. These are natural conflicts of IT, where the goal of IT is to have technology and services be easy and seamless and frictionless. Now, I need to call out cybersecurity is not the department of no. It's a department of how about we do it this way instead. While the easy answer might be, hey, let's just copy all of our payroll data up into the GPT model and go nuts. Sure, you can. I wouldn't recommend that approach, but that is the most convenient, it is the easiest, it is the fastest. Is it the most secure? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. So that's where cybersecurity comes through and goes, hey, how about we do it this way instead? Now, this is not a criticism of IT. IT does amazing work. That's where I started my career, in IT. But the outcomes and the objectives of IT and cybersecurity diverge. They are not a converging outcome, they're a diverging outcome. IT is working towards what they're incentivized to do. Because IT has this lovely paradox of everything's working. Why do we pay you? Everything's broken. Why do we bother paying you? There is no good answer for them, and cybersecurity it's similar. But the outcomes and the methodologies and how they approach that are very, very different. Cyber risk decisions have to be weighed up through the lens of risk acceptance, trade-offs, budget prioritizations, legal and regulatory judgment. Those are not IT problems. They shouldn't sit with IT. When cyber's left to IT alone, the organization ends up buying tools, buying widgets, rather than managing risk. They treat compliance as a checklist exercise rather than a maturity exercise. They confuse activity with actual outcomes. Unless you are reviewing and assessing and managing cybersecurity risk in the organization, then you're not obtaining maximum value from what you could be achieving. You need to be engaging with cyber risk as a risk channel in the business and approaching it that way. having the conversations around how we can manage this risk, how we can lower the risk. You already have those conversations around projects, around finance, around expansion. You just need to factor cyber into those conversations. Cybersecurity risk attaches to the revenue systems, the customer systems, the IP of the organizations, safety critical systems, supply chains. The question comes down to is, what do the executives care about? And if something's going to become unavailable, broken, damaged, destroyed for more than 48 hours, is that something you want to be caring about? Should you be caring about? How much do you care? Because what happens if this data is leaked, is lost, is destroyed? These aren't technical questions. These are business impact and business continuity questions. Cybersecurity exists to protect those outcomes. Let's pick an example to look at cybersecurity risk. Let's say, for example, you make a product that requires hydraulic ramps. Those rams have little seals around the end to maintain the pressure and scrape the dirt and the dust off the ram as it gets retracted. You conduct vendor risk assessment and you make sure that the vendor supplying you, and they've got access to your systems to raise and process orders and invoices, is reasonably secure. But have you actually looked at the continuity risk of this organization? If this other company gets ransomware and they get destroyed, what is the impact on not being able to buy that part for your business? Is there someone who you could then go and procure that part from in short order, meeting the same specifications? Is there a lead time on getting those parts? What is the impact that could have on your business through the loss of a major supplier, or even a minor supplier if the impact is going to be larger? This is where cybersecurity risk comes into it, and cybersecurity risk management. And that is firmly outside the realm of IT to be managing. It's not their problem. Looking at the supply chain risk and constraint of inputs into your business from a continuity of service is not an IT operations problem. Please stop trying to make it an IT operations problem. That is like square peg round hole, or to use one of my favorite axioms, going to see your GP for a toothache. Sure, they can make the pain go away, but the root cause of the problem is still there, and you're going to have to speak to someone to fix the problem. All of this is to try and reinforce the idea that cybersecurity exists to protect customers, data, the business, the staff. It encourages growth, it encourages trust, it encourages continuity of service. All of these things are business risks. They are not, is my Outlook working? Can I have a PDF editor? That's just it. With all of the expanding technology that businesses are using to improve upon outcomes, the technology is just the attack surface. It is the way the bad guy gets a foothold. It could be by way of a badly configured identity, or poorly managed access control, or a 0 day if you're really unlucky. And for those watching who don't know what a 0 day is, it is a security vulnerability that the software vendors haven't been made aware of yet, so they cannot create a patch for it. All this leads back to the fact that failing to include cyber risk as a business risk is a governance failure, and that is the true root cause. The majority of cybersecurity incidents aren't caused by exotic attacks using the 0 days, using sophisticated man in the middle with lateral movement and privilege. They don't do that. They do for some, but from the majority of attacks, it's someone clicking on a link, it's someone not receiving training, it is poor governance, it is ill-defined ownership of cybersecurity and cybersecurity risk, unclear reporting pathways, no clear indication of risk appetite and thus response or remediation. It is generally going to be one of the staff doing something they didn't mean to do that's going to cause the breach. But those are all common patterns that lead back to the same cause. When there is no ownership of cyber risk at the executive level, when the reporting to the board is in technical speak rather than board speak, and when risk assessment is based on emotion rather than evidentiary basis, then things are going to fail. We feel we're okay, it's not a control, it's a guess. You need to start assessing and quantifying and evaluating where you actually sit on the spectrum of cybersecurity from a maturity, from a governance, and from a risk perspective. Cybersecurity maturity, it is evidence-based, it is repeatable, and yeah, it's boring. It's really boring. That is what you want. If cybersecurity is interesting and exciting all the time, you are going to have a stress-induced anxiety attack. You want things to be known. You want to know where the problems are going to emerge and how you're going to address them. There is this misnomer that cybersecurity is running around in dark hoods and fending off attackers. That accounts for 0.001% of what actually happens. The majority of the time, you are making sure things are working the way they're supposed to and designed to work. It is boring, complex work. So this idea of the hero in the hoodie stopping the bad guy every day, fending off villains, it doesn't work that way. You are making sure that the alerts are responded to correctly, that they are actually a false alert and not a true alert. You're making sure that the policies are implemented correctly. You're making sure the software is working the way it's supposed to be working to protect the organization. Yes, it can be a really cool industry to work in and it's interesting because it's new and it's changing. But it's not, you're not in the military. You're not facing down bad guys guarding a wall. It doesn't work that way. If you're relying on that perception of heroics, or you're even relying on your guys to act, your team to act in a heroic way, to rise to the occasion, then you've already got a problem. Things are going to fail, and they're going to fail rapidly and hard. Now, what executive ownership actually looks like and what the executive involvement means, it doesn't mean approving firewall rules. It doesn't mean determining what is the correct endpoint detection software to use. Think modern antivirus. It doesn't mean what brand of firewall do we use, or exactly how should we configure our backups. That is not a problem for an executive to be dealing with. And frankly, if you're having the conversations with them at that level, they're not going to care, and you're going to have a hard time getting traction because they don't understand what you're talking about. You need to speak the language of risk. You need to have the conversations in a language that works for them. The executives, they define the risk appetite. They set the expectations and desired outcomes. They help determine strategic priorities and objectives and plans. They support in funding. They hold people to account when they do not deliver. That is what the executive layer is buying in at. The questions that the boards and executives need to be asking is, what's our most critical asset? Why is it our most critical? Do we have more than one? How are they managed and maintained? How are they stored? How did we look after those? Do we have a fallback? What is the most likely way that this could fail, could be damaged, could be destroyed? If that is an outcome, what is the impact to the organization? Can we recover in what time frame? These are all things that need to be discussed with and reviewed and accepted by the board. If this system is attacked, how quickly can we detect it? How quickly can we respond? How quickly can we eliminate the threat from the environment? These are all things that the board and the senior leadership and the executive group need to set their intentions upon. If they say, we want to know within 4 hours of a threat actor being in the network, then systems get designed in line with that. If they go, we're happy having a bad guy in the network for 2 weeks, then systems get designed in line with that outcome. It is not cybersecurity's place to tell the board how to do their job. It is the board's place to impart upon the cybersecurity team what the goal and the risk tolerance and the risk appetite is. The board also needs to work out what risks are we knowingly accepting. What is tolerable to us? What are we prepared to live with losing? Without that, you cannot design an appropriate structure for cybersecurity activity. Now, the leadership sections within the cybersecurity team and department and realm, they need to have the authority to act. They need to have independence. They need to have access to decision makers. And this is one of the reasons why the fractional CISO model exists. It's not there to replace IT or replace the MSP or replace the internal IT. It's there to support it with governance and risk leadership. I love working with technical people. It's been my industry for the last 25 years. I like having those conversations. I speak the language. I enjoy having those conversations. I will always learn something from them, regardless of the person who I am speaking with. But when I ask these up-and-coming professionals into the industry who may be technical specialists, how have we assessed or managed or mitigated risk in here? It is not their area. It is for me to ask the question, so you've done this and this and this, and then work out, okay, what is the impact on the organizational risk through these controls and systems and tools and suites and service level agreements that have been implemented. It is there to support, not replace, to work alongside, to work with. Now, cybersecurity is not about preventing every single incident. That's impossible, especially in the current landscape. It's about reducing the likelihood. It's about reducing the impact. It's improving recovery times. It's improving resilience. Not being able to recover from an incident means you've now got an extinction level event for your organization on your hands. We want to have the impact being as small as possible. We'll call that a blast radius. If the blast radius only hits a single computer, great, it's an inconvenience. If the blast radius hits every single device in the company and you've got 200 of them, how long is it going to take you to rebuild 200 devices? How much data is going to be destroyed? How much downtime is that going to cause your organization? Let's assume it takes a week. So you've now got 200 staff not being able to use their laptops for 5 days. Let's assume we can get 20% back each day. So on day 1, 20% your staff can start working again, day 2, 40, day 3. You're effectively losing 50% of a week's labour out of your team that you're going to be paying for or sending them on leave. That is a risk to the organisation. That is going to carry a cost, and that's before we look at the digital forensics and incident response costs, or DFIR costs, that usually include some legal elements, reputational elements, reporting elements that have to be incorporated into the recovery exercise. All of this matters. So when we talk about reducing impact, improving recovery, reducing the likelihood, that's what we're trying to do. It's where the whole concept of cybersecurity versus cyber resilience comes in. Cybersecurity is preventing the bad thing happening. Cyber resilience is coming back from it quickly. And they are two closely related fields within the cybersecurity domain. When we look at these particular recovery mechanisms and what we're trying to prevent, they need to be treated in the same way the business treats financial risk, legal risk, occupational health and safety risk. And when they're framed properly, it lets us improve the conversation to move away from panic buying or shiny tools or whichever vendor has the greatest widget or junket this quarter. You can actually approach it with proper prioritization, looking at what product is going to provide the best outcome if and when a product is going to be the solution. It could be a training-based response, it could be a policy-based response, it could be anything. All of these things in conjunction turn cybersecurity maturity into a strategic enabler rather than a business cost or a tax upon the business. All of these things matter towards improving the structural efficiency and growth of the organisation. Now, cybersecurity risk, it can't be solved through delegation alone. You can delegate tasks. You cannot delegate accountability. If your cybersecurity still sits entirely within IT, entirely within your managed services provider, then governance is missing. Risk is unmanaged. Exposure is higher than you think. And if it was to land on your desk anyway, then cybersecurity is already your responsibility, which means you're already carrying it. Shouldn't you properly get advice for it? Now, boards and executives who are watching this, if you want to review how your cyber risk is reported, conduct workshops, conduct sessions on how decisions are being made and if they're being made at the right level, happy to have a conversation, because if any part of this makes you feel uncomfortable, that's usually a sign that it matters, and it's usually a sign that your organisation might not be as mature or as ready as you hoped it would be. As always happy to have a chat on anything cyber related. I love this stuff. Speak to you later.